Welcome to Seen and Me Connects, a podcast sharing stories that inspire, educate and connect those working across healthcare. In this episode, Fiola Murphy and Gertrude Roddy explore the sensitive and often misunderstood topic of bedwetting in children. They discuss the common causes and contributing factors, practical strategies for parents around fluid management and healthy habits, and the influence of bowel patterns on treatment success. The episode also covers treatment options, the role of bedwetting alarms, and how to support children, tweens and teens with empathy and confidence. This conversation offers clear guidance and compassionate insight, empowering families and healthcare professionals to make meaningful, positive change in a child's daily life.
Hello and welcome to our podcast. I'm your host. My name is Fiola Murphy. I work with the HSE based here in Sligo. I am a qualified public health nurse and I work currently as a development officer with the National Healthy Childhood Programme. Today, we're going to talk about a condition that many families quietly struggle with behind closed doors and try and figure things out themselves at home. And it's bedwetting in children. Now, the medical term for this is called nocturnal enuresis, but we're not going to bother with the medical term today. We're going to keep it simple and talk about bedwetting in children. Now, it is more common than people realise, and for parents that are tuned in today, know that you're not alone in this. It is quite common, and we'll find out just how common it is in just a couple of minutes when we're talking with our expert. And we know that it's not only a physical problem, the bedwetting, the associated worry and frustration and anxiety, and sometimes even stigma that can be associated with it for the child and for the parents. That's a whole big issue. So we want to look at that and dissect that today. We're going to talk about what bedwetting is and the real simple strategies that you as a parent that's listening in today can adapt within your home. Really simple little strategies that might make a huge difference to the bedwetting problem that your child is experiencing. We'll talk about the treatment options. And then we're going to talk about a little bit about how you can support your child or your teenager through this and how you can look after yourself in all of this, because it can be a completely stressful situation for a parent, for a couple, for the family in general. So we're going to talk about that over the next 30 to 40 minutes. I'm joined today by Gertrude Roddy. Hi, Gertrude.
Hello, how are you?
Gertrude is a candidate advanced nurse practitioner, currently completing her MSc in advanced nursing practice. Gertrude is a midwife and she's also a public health nurse like myself, and we've worked together many years. In her role as a public health nurse, Gertrude has completed the certified e-pediatric continence modules with the International Children's Continence Society and has worked for many years, indeed over 12 years, to treat and manage bedwetting in children in community clinics. Gertrude has recently published her research on the factors that impact the effectiveness of the bedwetting alarm, a review of the literature, and is published in the International Journal of Urological Nursing. So we're delighted, Gertrude, to have you here today. You're a real expert in this area. We've been planning this podcast for some time now, and we're so glad that we finally got together because we really feel there's a need for it out there to support parents and children. So we'll get straight into it, Gertrude, and really start at the very beginning and keep it simple. Just what is bedwetting?
Bedwetting is a common problem, commoner than people think. It's not a normal experience for children, but it is very common. 1 in 10 children can have a problem with bedwetting, which makes it a significantly challenging problem for parents and children themselves. And from the age of 5 upwards, right through until they're young adults into teenage years, this can be a problem for children.
So you're saying that if a child isn't dry at night when they're starting school, that is when a parent needs to, I suppose, be given it a bit more attention, that it's outside the normal parameters.
And when children go through the normal toilet training process, sometimes nighttime dryness will always come maybe 10 months after the child has attained their daytime dryness. Right. So when children are going to school, for parents, then that creates anxiety. Normally, of course it does, and for the child. So it gets that heightened awareness then. So between the ages of 5 and 7, we would always say to parents to lean heavily into the behavioural and the lifestyle modifications to try and address the problem. And they can have huge successes with those measures.
Okay then. All right. Okay. So look, that's great. And we're going to talk about those behavioural strategies that parents can have. But let's look at, first of all, about what the causes of it are and any factors that might contribute to it. Can you talk us through some of those?
Yeah, well, really to group it into, there's 3 causative factors. And the first factor that we might discuss maybe is associated with arousal. It's probably one of the commonest things people say, and parents have say that their children doesn't wake up. And that's exactly what it is. The child is sleeping through that sensation. They don't feel that sensation to void, and they aren't able to respond to it at night to wake up. The next one is associated with what we say is a small bladder capacity. So the bladder isn't stretching enough at night to hold in the urine. And that we'll talk about it later on. Anyway, I think we look at increasing bladder capacity in the day, increasing fluids to get that bladder to fill better, so then it stores better at night, and that can help to reduce that problem. And then the third factor that is associated with the causative factors is as children mature and develop, they produce more of a hormone called vasopressin. And this hormone, its function is to concentrate urine at night and help us to sleep. And some children, as they progress through, develop that hormone at a slower rate than others. And those children, maybe at 7, 8, and 9, are developing that natural production of that hormone slower than other children. And then those are the children who will have bedwetting because of lack of this particular hormone. And sometimes you get that natural resolution. Sometimes parents do everything and then the child suddenly becomes dry. And if it's associated with that, it's just part of the natural maturation process.
Okay, then that's really interesting. So that child that sleeps through the whole thing, they're really in a deep sleep, these children.
They're in a deep
and they just
sleep.
Don't wake. They have no sensation. They don't know that they're wet. They just sleep through the whole thing. And we have children that are deep sleepers like that. And I suppose the management strategies for each of those will be different. And we'll talk about those in a few minutes. All right. Now, you said there was some contributing factors as well.
Contributing factor, really. And any child who develops a new onset of bedwetting after they've attained their normal toileting and their normal nighttime dryness, any child with a new onset of bedwetting would always say talk to your GP, because they know your child well. They know the general health and well-being of your child, how they sleep, how they eat. And you can give them all that information so they can do that assessment. But what you're really looking at is the biggest contributing factor would be constipation. And that's a huge, huge factor for children with bedwetting. So much so that when people used to come into the clinic to me, they would come in with the problem of bedwetting, but then go out with a whole set of new observations to make around bowel toileting. And that was a surprise. And it's a surprise for people.
Okay. All right. Okay. Because we would in our public health nursing days, and we would be running our child developmental assessments, and parents would come in with their little 2-year-old for the developmental assessment. And often parents would have said to me, and their older brother and sister, who might be 5, 7 or 8, she said, my child, they've been dry for some time. They have been dry, but they're suddenly started to wet the bed. Many times parents have said that to me during developmental clinics about an older child. So you're saying the first line of management for that would be definitely go to the GP and then look at the behavioural modification.
What you're asking yourself, what's changed for my child? Is my child well? Are they unusually thirsty? Are they still as good and thriving as they have always been? This bedwetting is a new onset, but he is with a UTI. You're looking at those kind of things. You're looking at because you know your own child best, and you're looking at, is your child well? Sometimes in families, this can happen when there's bereavements, losses, separations, any anxieties, any changes in school. And that can also be a trigger. So that's why it's very important to look at, yes, the physiological health, but also the emotional and psychological health and well-being of the child around that time, if anything new happens. Absolutely. But constipation is one of the factors in there.
All right then, okay. So we talked about, and in the intro, about the simple strategies parents can look at home. And so we're going to spend a bit of time talking about these, because these really are key to making a huge difference in the home. And I was amazed because in our preparation for this, you talked me through them, and they're such simple and obvious techniques. And I can see how they would be maybe a solution in many cases to the problem. So can you talk us through the first steps parents can look at within the home that they can support their child?
And you're so right, Fiola, with what you say in relation to when you hear them said out loud, they all seem so simple. The beauty of that is that they're also achievable for parents in every house. But the difficulty of it is sometimes we hear this so often that it becomes kind of nearly, does it really work type of scenario? And they do really work. When you know the rationale behind them, they do work. So I suppose the first things that we can have a look at is the timing and spacing of the child's fluids. And 75% of the child's fluids should really be taken in the early part of the day. And we all know from the child who is 5 upwards to 15 or 16, morning time is really hard. They're busy. The breakfast, they don't really get an opportunity to drink a lot. We need to hone in on that and focus on having something to drink before you go out to school. It's really, really good. Because it starts to fill the bladder. Throughout the day then, drinking their water in school, that's challenging for children. It's challenging because they're busy, they're having fun, maybe they're not allowed to the toilet. There's different rules in different schools and institutions, which is the way it has to be for everything to function. So you need to be creative with how you get your fluids in during the day, and help your child to think about how and when they can drink in school within the way the system runs there. And then in relation to the evening, when they come in from school, start small, 250 mils or 500 ml bottle, and encourage them, incentivize first conversation when they come in the door to you, their childminder, their creche, wherever they're going. Share all of this with your care providers and having that conversation around, did you get your bottle of water finished today? Well done. Because you're setting the tone. If they didn't, depends what they do. They may sit up, they maybe have straight in for their food, they may be having a rest, whatever they're doing, sitting up watching a little bit of telly. Give them a drink. Try and get the fluids in when they come in from school. If they're coming home on the bus, encourage them to take out their bottle and say, oh, can you have the bottle drank when you come home? Show me that. And they can come maybe running in the door with half of it gone or something. So encouraging them to finding smart ways to get them to get their fluids in. And like some people say about fluids before bedtime, no, we stop drinks before bed. What I would say is children need thirst quenchers. Yes, definitely. If they have their 75% of their fluids, close to their 6 glasses of water or their bottled juice water, whichever they're having, if they have that in the early part of the day, then you're set for success, because the child isn't thirsty at night. They may need a thirst quencher, but they're not coming looking for big drinks.
Big volumes,
Big volumes, yeah. And water and milk are ideal. I suppose life happens for everybody, and we lean into, and children lean into tea, the caffeinated drinks, teenagers, the lattes, carbonated drinks, the energy drinks, they're all caffeine based, and they do irritate the bladder. They irritate the inner lining of the bladder and cause it to be a little bit more vulnerable and a little bit more active, which at night will cause bedwetting. If you have a bit of overactivity in the bladder, you may have bedwetting. You might see the different stains. You may have one episode early in the night. You may have another one in the middle of the night. And that's from that overactivity. So looking at your timing of fluids, your spacing of fluids, sipping your fluids throughout the day, to get the bladder to fill and to empty. That's one of the biggest things around fluids.
That's so important.
Finally, just for the parents who have, the kids go to their after school activities. And they're coming in at 8 o'clock and they've played their football. All these activities are later because the parents that are running them are all volunteers. So these children are out, they're drinking later. But if you see your child guzzling back their water after training, start thinking maybe can we have conversations around, were you a bit dehydrated and how your body was empty? If you went to training with your body full of water, had your fluids earlier in the day, you'd have better energy for training. You'd be able to run faster, score more goals. That they love all, especially the young children. They love that. And then your child is not rehydrating a dehydrated body. They're going topping up. And does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes
That's
complete
a huge
sense,
problem
Gertrude.
for parents and
It
children.
is, yeah. And that's real practical advice because, children have their activities. It's important that they're doing their activities and just how to build that fluid intake in there. So you're saying, fill up during the day as much as possible ahead of the training. And then after the training, it's really just thirst quenchers they need after that.
And on the HSE website, www.hse.ie, there's links there to fluid advice for your age of your child. There's fluid recommendations based on the particular age, because this scope of the podcast is from age 5 up to age 16. There's advice in there, but a general sense, and the reason and the rationale behind that is when you encourage your child to drink their fluids spaced throughout the day, they're filling their bladder and the bladder is stretching. It's sending a signal up the spine to the brain. The brain is interpreting that, and that's coming down as a response to get them to void. And it's that filling and emptying of the good bladder capacities in the day, which helps to treat one of the causative factors we mentioned a few minutes ago about that small bladder. And that's how you treat that. one of those causative factors is solely treated by just what we talked about. But the other part of a healthy bladder is good voiding habits. And we'll say that means going to the toilet regularly throughout the day. But for these children is listening to their bladder signals. So what all that means for a parent and for a child is when you're at home, if your children put off going to the toilet sometimes because they're too busy. They're having fun. Yeah, they're playing their games. They're out at football. They don't want to come in. They think it can wait. Or they want to finish playing with whoever they're playing with online and before they go because they lose their space or whatever happens. And so putting those behaviours, what you see in the child is you see them tapping, you see them wriggling their feet, crossing their legs, sitting on the side of the chair. All of those things are telling you this child is putting off going to the toilet. So having a conversation with them about you want your bladder to wake you up at night. So you need to listen to it in the day when it's calling out. The bladder in the day when it's full, your bladder's full and it's giving you that sensation, I need to go to the toilet. If you tell it in the day, oh no, be quiet, I have to finish my game, I can't go. At night, you're teaching it that you're not listening. You're not listening to it. So teaching your child to listen when the bladder is calling out to them is really, really important.
And that can be explained to children in a very simple way, can't it?
Oh, very simple.
That they can understand, okay, if I do this, it's going to help me, that's important. The parents find a way to explain this in a simple way to a child so that they have the understanding as well.
Yeah, and what I think the most simplest way is to say a balloon. Picture a balloon. Your bladder is a balloon. It's filling up with water and you want the balloon to stretch. And the balloon is at a nice size. You want it to, it's calling out to you, saying, I need to empty down. You go to the toilet, you pee. You drink more, you inflate your balloon a little bit, you go to the toilet, you pee. And all of that creates a better bladder capacity and creates more awareness of the bladder filling and emptying, which is really, really helpful.
That's really good advice, Gertrude. And then just, is there a little tool that parents and children can use to check their wee, to check the color, to know that they are hydrated? A good guide for parents, but also a teaching tool for a child as well that they can understand.
Yeah, you probably use that a bit maybe as a public health nurse as well, Fiola.
Yeah.
The wee checker. On the HSE website, there's a link to the ERIC website. So again, as I said, it's at the end of the notes, but there is a tool on that. It's a lovely tool for parents. It's called a wee checker. It's child friendly and it has the different colours from normal straw coloured urine to dark concentrated urine. And especially small children. They absolutely love to look at that in relation to saying, oh, you can do magic. By drinking water, you can change the colour of your wee. You can make it clear. So then when they come home and they're going to the toilet and you're saying to them, oh, what colour is your wee today? What's it telling you? And then they'll say, oh, mommy, it's dark, it's orange, oh, it's nearly invisible. They love those conversations. Yeah. And on that site as well, there is, it's a big fancy term. It's called a Bristol stool chart. And what it is it's a diagram of the different types of poo. And that helps to open up conversations with your child around the type of poo they're passing and the normal type of poo, because they can find that difficult to articulate as well. So we will talk a little bit about constipation in a few minutes, but just the two of those are on the exact same site. Two tools. Brilliant. One is about wee and the other one's about poo that you can get off, print or save on your tablet, and you could show your child and help them to look at it.
And we will come back to that in 1 minute. I want to go look at the other cause factor then was the hormone, the vasopressin. Yes. So can you tell us about that and how that's managed?
Well, what happens is, as I said earlier, when the child is going through the natural maturation process, vasopressin develops. It's a natural hormone within the body and it helps to concentrate urine at night and it reduces the volumes that we produce. Parents can, as I said, talking to your GP, it's on prescription. It's only a treatment for the type of enuresis whereby that hormone isn't produced. It doesn't work for children who sleep through. It doesn't work for the small bladder capacity. So there is different treatment strategies. But what parents can do is for nights away, for breaks, for holidays, they may be able to have a conversation with the GP about trying that. And they will achieve it the dry night for that period, but it isn't the long-term treatment.
Do they take a blood test? Is that how they find out that they're low in vasopressin? How do they find out?
No, that's based on your assessment. When I have a child in clinic, when I go through all my screening questions, I will be able to pick out the child, which of those categorization the child falls under. The other thing that informs that clinical decision hugely is your bladder diary. So I would always give parents a bladder diary. You can record your own bladder diary at home, and there's one actually on the ERIC website. So you're observing, you're writing down how much your child is drinking every time they go to the toilet for a period of 3 days. You measure and the volumes of urine. So it's definitely something that's based on clinical assessment. That informs that decision.
I see. Okay. So you're saying the vasopressin is not a long-term solution. It's only a short-term. Am I right in saying that?
Yes.
It's a medication that they go on.
It's a medication. Yeah. Some children can take it for a longer period. They can take it for maybe 3 months.
Okay.
But you're buying time for the natural maturation process to kick in.
Yeah. Okay. Then no, that can be, and so it starts with the GP. The GP prescribes that.
But the first things that you look at, because that will not work if you have not looked at your lifestyle measures, your fluids, your behavior training, your bowel, your constipation. It won't work because it's not for every category.
Okay, so we're just going to go back to that contributing factor, the constipation. And I suppose you can't kind of underestimate the impact that constipation can have on bedwetting. Could you talk us through that a little bit more?
Constipation, as I said, is one of the biggest contributing factors. And what happens is the stored feces creates pressure within the bowel and pushes on a bladder that's already a little bit compromised. So you're looking at the Bristol stool chart, the little diagram that I told you about, to see how often is your child going to the toilet and what type of poo are they making. When children become toilet trained, they start going on their own, the door closes. So keeping that open door policy is really important, not literally, but in relation to open conversations about wee and poo with your child. With your 5 and 6 and 7-year-old, did you go to the toilet today? Did you make a poo? What did it look like? And using the tools from the website can be really, really helpful because they're not able to articulate what's normal and what's abnormal. You're looking for your type 4, sausage-like, smooth, soft consistency, and that's what you're looking for regularly. And constipation is significant in small children and in teenagers. And you're looking at your diet. Is your child a fruit eater? Are they a vegetable eater? How can you incentivize that? If they aren't, and their fibers, the types of cereal they're eating, the bread they're eating, their pastas, how are they getting their fiber in the day, and what's their activity like and their exercise? Are they out? Are they playing sport? That all contributes to healthy bowel. Also, going to the toilet. When you observe your child, you're going to see what their pattern is. When you start having conversations with them about, are you going to the toilet to do a poo? They're going to be giving you that information. And if you're not hearing that the child is emptying their bowel regularly with that soft stool, then you need to be looking at your interventions in relation to start off with the diet. You're working on the fluids already. And then the other one is encouraging your child to go to the toilet with the footstool and sitting on the toilet 20 minutes after breakfast every day. Now, it can be mayhem in the morning. So if it's a thing you find your child every time day when they come in from school, they're kind of thinking, I need to go to the toilet, or that's ad hoc. If evening is a better time, encouraging them to go and sit in the toilet with their little feet up on a footstool for a few minutes after the dinner. So after either meal, breakfast is better, but it's not better if it doesn't work in your home and if it's really busy. Because you want a child to sit on the toilet after either breakfast or dinner for a few minutes to see if they can relax. And when they're relaxed on the toilet, the poo will come. Having that conversation about, we'll do it in the morning. And that's why the advice is tailored to every child. It has to work. The child has to sit and be relaxed. Because the gastrocolic reflex, it's another fancy term for when everybody takes in food, breakfast or dinner, 20 minutes later the bowel does an autonomic contraction. And that helps the process of defecation. And when they sit on the toilet with their feet on the little footstool, don't ever throw that little footstool away from toileting, keep it. And when they sit there for a few minutes and relax, after about 2 weeks, the bowel starts to train itself. And the child, as I say, about your rewards, don't reward for the poo, reward for the sitting on the toilet and relaxing. Did you go out and check and see? Did you go and try and do a poo today? And then that can happen. And that can help the child who's constipated.
Fantastic. Really fantastic advice. I have 3 more things I want to ask you about there. The lifting at night. Okay, so many parents use this as a strategy as well. It works for some parents. What does the evidence say about that?
Lifting at night, it's more of a management strategy. I've met parents who use it when they're going away, when they're on a sleepover, nannies, when holiday times, and they know that when they lift their child, that they will have a way. The child they think is awake, but usually these children may be still asleep. Most of them don't remember it. And they can get a dry bed sometimes, and that helps the family to be able to function, because this is all so stressful for parents.
Stressful.
But as a technique to help the child to feel, oh, my bladder is full, I'm feeling it, I'm going to wake, it doesn't work, because you don't know when the child's bladder is full. You're just getting them out of bed, sitting them on the toilet for a dry bed. Management strategy to achieve that for a holiday, for a night away, but it's not a treatment. It doesn't work.
And then I suppose the other obvious one then is the use of pull-ups. And I can understand why you would use a pull-up, absolutely.
Again, another management strategy, while I suppose what I say is parents use them commonly. They have to buy them and they're expensive for parents. That's another burden on families. So while you're looking at your behavioural, your lifestyle measures that do work, people use pull-ups. The thing with pull-ups is they interfere with the child's ability to differentiate between wet and dry. But if you have a child and you're saying, okay, we're going to have a look and see what can we do about this, whether we can take them out of the pull-ups or not. Start with what we spoke about earlier. Start about the fluids, timing and spacing of fluids, looking at the types that they're drinking, looking at your wee checker, looking at your bedtime routine, looking at your bowels, and make sure there's no constipation. When you start to look at all of those things, and when they start to be, they're a behaviour change, and behaviour change is really difficult for us as adults, and it is very difficult for children. So when you start to look at those things, then you might start to notice, actually, this pull-up isn't wet every night, or it's not as wet as it used to be, drier. So then you could say, oh, maybe it's damp. We might try it and take it off. If you decide that, make sure the most important thing you do is set your child up for success. Protect the bed, put on your protectors, which nearly everybody has done, but tell the child, we've done this work, we've looked at this, we've reduced our fluids, we've cut out any carbonated drinks, any tea, and we know that we're doing our good, healthy wees and poos. And we notice that your nappy isn't as wet as it used to be. It used to be really heavy, now it's lighter. So we could try without it. That might help them to get the awareness of wet and dry. Also, by telling them what's going to happen, you will protect them in relation to waking up all wet, because that's unpleasant, it's soul destroying, and it's actually terrifying for a child who hasn't experienced it. So there is a place, depending on how they get on.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And the other one I want to ask you about is where the place for the bedwetting alarm. Where does that come in?
Recognised treatment for the children who have they fail to wake up. They sleep through the wetting experience. And that is very, very good treatment for that type of enuresis.
Okay.
Yeah. And the only thing about that is, for it to be successful, it's a step-by-step process. The child who will have the success with the alarm will be the child who will have looked at the timing and spacing of fluids, all of the things we spoke about a few minutes ago. So that's incremental. Because don't forget, the alarm is a big commitment. Getting up every night with a child who's wet, the showering in the morning, that's huge. But the alarm, the child needs to be in the right place for you to get success with it. So if you've gone through those measures, you're setting the child up again for success. The alarm can be on for about 3 months. It involves a mature enough child that they can engage with it, that they'll hear the sounds, that they'll respond, they'll go to the toilet. So this thing is going to wake them up 2 to 3 times in the night. And they need to listen to it. They need to go out to the bathroom. And they're the factors that were in the research about, waking and the timing of the alarm for parents. It is a commitment. So you might say, oh, do you know what? It just depends what's going on in your house at the one time, at any given time.
I wouldn't advise a parent to go online and buy a bedwetting alarm without getting those other strategies that we talked about earlier, that they're setting themselves up for failure straight away if they go straight to the bedwetting alarm.
Yeah, it's incremental to get their best success. Don't forget as well with children, I just seen this from my own practice. you get one chance to try something that's difficult for them, because for them to commit to wearing an alarm, it's a body-worn device. They have to wear it. It's not the most pleasant thing either. So you have coercion and coaxing and supporting, and then they do it. But if you really need to make sure they're set for success. When you go back and try it again in a year, if it didn't work, if you haven't done all that, they say, "Oh no, mommy, I did that already. I'm not doing that again." And it's their choice whether to put it on or not. So by setting them up for success, going through all the other measures, when you introduce something like an alarm, which is highly effective and brilliant, the child is ready for it and they'll engage with it. And there is the burden of the waking, but they'll engage. You might just get one opportunity to do that. And I know
For
that,
sure.
from practice myself.
Yeah, no, that's really good, Gertrude. Okay, thanks for that. So I want to talk a little bit, we've covered an awful lot there, but I do want to talk a little bit about the stress this brings to a child, a teenager, the parents and the wider family. And you've probably touched on a lot of it through your conversation. Just how can the parent, we'll say, support the child, that the child doesn't feel it's their fault?
I think, to be fair, what I've seen is it's the relentless nature of it. It's just constant. And people don't get the break. And that's what's very difficult for parents and children. So like we say, in relation to the child, they really do need that understanding from everybody around them. It shouldn't be, but it is a taboo subject. It's something that they're afraid to talk about. So I usually say to them, how many children are in your class? If they say, I say, there's 3 people in your room and they all have the bedwetting problem. But do you know anybody else who has it? And they'll say, oh no, I know nobody. So that's a big secret. And it's a big burden to carry every day. And then when you are a teenager and you have to go to school and you are in the morning and showering and all of the self-consciousness that goes with odor, everything, that is, and you're trying, these children, of course, at a stage where you're trying to build their self-esteem, and that negatively impacts self-esteem as well. So understanding is the most important thing for the child, and actually giving them the opportunity to talk about it. There's a parental element as well. You'll often find that if a parent, maternal or paternal parent, had bedwetting, either the mother or father's side, that the child may be bedwetting, sharing your own stories. Share the stories with the child. That helps normalise the process, normalise the event, and reassurance that there's help, there's things we can do to get better, and we work on them together. So that sort of approach. And I suppose then for the parents, realising there are things you can do, as we talked about here, going through those lifestyle measures, they do work. They definitely help. And what you want to get is a reduction in your volume of wetting, which will come with a reduction in frequency. The maturation process will help. Then when you're going through that, the alarm, Public Health Nursing Service offer enuresis clinics for children, and your GP. So you have those services there, but there's definitely so much incremental work that you can do from what we've spoken about today to bring you to that stage. So as a parent, knowing that works is really, really helpful. But also, I suppose the message I'd like to give parents is it's okay to take a break from it. Because sometimes the constant reminding, the remembering, oh, did you drink your water? That whole conversation, this is on top of your work and everything. So maybe just saying, it's actually okay to say, let the child lead out in it for a week and I'll just, quietly observe. Be surprised too what happens in that observation period. So then that gives you a bit of a break, gives you a few days to say, okay, it's not about mentally having a break. It's just about the headspace of having a break.
Yeah. Absolutely,
so that might help for people.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Really, really good. We're nearly finished. I suppose what I'm conscious of teenagers, the children wouldn't access this podcast, but teenagers in the quietness of their own bedroom might be Googling, they might be experiencing bedwetting and they're looking, and this podcast pops up for them. What would you like to say to that teenager now, today, to give them confidence?
I've had them in the clinic and I know what it's like to be for a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old to sit in front of you with this problem that really makes them feel different to their peers. And that's really, really hard to feel different, especially at that age. But the one thing I would say is if you are a teenager and you're struggling with bedwetting, definitely speak to your GP. Ask for a referral to an enuresis clinic. in your locality. Start working on the behavioural lifestyle measures that we've spoken about here, which are really good. And I definitely encourage everybody with a child from 5+ right up to start with those behavioural lifestyle measures. Your child has time. They can do really, really well with those measures. But for the teenagers, I would say talk to your parents and chat to your GP and look for a referral to your endometriosis clinic. And work on the behavioural measures as well. Because sometimes in that age group, I have seen it. I have had those teenagers into my clinic for 2 visits. And the changes they've made are fluid, getting rid of the carbonated drinks, the energy drinks, the caffeinated drinks, and looking at their bowel and their constipation. And I can definitely say that I have had teenagers who sat in front of me for an initial history and treatment and advice and have returned dry. And when I've rang them 2 to 3 months later to follow up, they're still dry. And the only 2 things they've done is change their fluid, increase their water, started eating kiwis and fruit, and their bowel is working better. And that's amazing. All. So you have plenty of room there to do those 2 things. And then if they fail,
so achievable. Those are just so achievable for any child or teenager. Yeah, that's really encouraging, Gertrude.
I suppose really and truly, I'm delighted that we got the information in today, that we got in here. I suppose for people, that advice, that does work. You know, it's good to reach out, don't suffer in silence, but the advice in there, you break that down, you can have significant success with it. Definitely.
Okay, and then just the GP, and you mentioned about the PHN on your EC clinics. Refer to those is through your GP. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, your schools nurse.
Schools nurse. Yeah. Okay.
And what I'm saying to people is, if you're in touch with whichever healthcare provider you're in touch with, speak to them about the problem. Ask, where do you go? They all know. They can all signpost. Every locality is different. So whatever healthcare provider you're in contact with, have that conversation. Oh, I have a problem with bedwetting. Where will I go? And they'll help you to signpost in your locality. But they're the dedicated services.
Okay. Well, Gertrude, I think we can wrap it up there. Really appreciate that. I've learned so much there, and I'm sure parents listening in will have taken so much away from all the information you've given. And thanks for shedding a light on this really important and often hidden issue. So parents just listening, that they know now they're not alone. There's a lot they can do within the house. There's also people they can go to for more help. And we will link all those great resources and websites that you talked about earlier on into the show notes. So thanks for joining us today, Gertrude. And if you found this episode helpful, please share it and leave us a review. Really appreciate it. So see you again. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.